The Apple Vision is exciting until it's not.
Welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk about tech in the future, including the dark parts of it. If you're into that sort of thing, please consider giving us a subscribe. We are over 1,000 subscribers now, so very exciting. So thank everyone who has done it so far, and please consider joining us for some more. So let's talk about what is probably the worst case scenario maybe for the Apple Vision and AR in general. And we'll start with this idea of dynamic pricing. What is this? Tell us about it.
So this comes from Amy Webb in her 2024 Emerging Tech Trend Report. And her claim is that essentially we're going to get to a place where everybody's wearing wearables everywhere they go. And it can create this kind of economy where you get dynamic pricing based on who is actually looking at the thing. Mm-hmm. So you're at the grocery store, everybody's wearing wearables. You look at the price for an object, it knows about you and knows that you can afford more. So you pay more. But it's this idea, and it can get even worse when you consider advertising being introduced into this.
This already happens when you shop online. I think anyone who travels a lot knows that once you see a ticket price for a certain time and date, you're going to see that same airplane ticket price on every single website. And that's because they're tracking you through cookies and Facebook Pixel and Google and all these sorts of things, so that you're served a certain thing over and over again. It actually knows about you, so it knows how much it can charge, all these kinds of things. Lots of algorithmic pricing already out there. And this is introducing it to the real world. Wendy's just got a lot of heat for this idea of like a surge menu pricing, where it's like they'll raise the prices when there's a lot of demand. And of course, they came out with a press release that says, no. It's the idea of we can make things better for customers when there's low demand. I was like, so just the same thing, but saying it in reverse? Like, that's still bad? Like, dynamic pricing is something that I think a lot of companies look at how they can take that into the real world, because like the fundamental aspect of unregulated capitalism, right, is grow or die. It doesn't matter if you were making money, you have to be making more money than you did last year or last quarter. And for some of these businesses, there's only so much money you can make. How can we make a little extra money? Oh, this is a way to do that, but kind of scary.
And one specific scenario she talked about is dynamic pricing, but being related to attention coupons. So we're all familiar with how coupons work, but in this sense, it's like you're at the grocery store, you're about to grab the item to put it into your cart, and you have to watch an ad. And so you have to watch an ad to get that discount that you've been looking for. So you're sitting there for 30 seconds, then you can grab the item you want and put it in your cart, and you get the price you need. And she points out that people who don't have to worry about money would just be able to peruse and take much less time at the grocery store, because they're like, I don't care about that coupon. I don't need $1 off on that. I don't have to give my attention. And so it creates this big dichotomy of people watching ads and needing to watch ads in order to survive versus people not.
This is literally a Black Mirror episode. Like, they actually have an episode about this where you're like forced to watch ads and you have to pay to not watch ads. Yeah, it's like, man, we should maybe listen to writers and stuff more, because this is the future we are heading toward.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could do this even outside of AR, right? You don't even need to be wearing the wearables to do this. I think of how the Amazon stores work, the actual physical Amazon stores. And for those of you who have never experienced this, there's a couple of them here in the LA area, but you don't check out. You just put your items in a cart and leave. When you enter the store, you have your phone out and it scans who you are, and then it literally tracks you around the store, and then it charges you based on whatever's in your cart when you leave.
Yeah.
If you think of stuff like face recognition software, or you don't even need face recognition, if you're actually already scanning your Amazon ID when you walk in, they have the history of everything you've bought. They know every website you're going to. They know they can build a fake version of you, essentially, and now you apply that into the physical world, where they, maybe they know that, like, you're more susceptible to these prices or to these luxury items. So they can manipulate it in real time.
Yeah, you think about that on the salesman point of view. If you go to somewhere and you're actually dealing with a salesman where you can haggle the price down, you don't want them to know your history. You don't want them to know what you own.
Yeah.
If you own nice
You
things.
never want to be the first guy in negotiation to talk, right? It's like a classic rule. Don't be the first guy to throw out a price. And now not going to be able to hold that back. They're always going to know.
Yeah, and they know way more than anyone could ever know,
Right.
because they have your full history of Amazon purchases across the board. An interesting thing they could put the brakes on, though, is just general electricity, because we're seeing this in a few different areas, but we have data miners, we have crypto miners, and we have all of this AI. And this is something we've seen in various studies and articles, but Elon Musk has talked about it in particular, that we're going to be running out of electricity because of all the demands. And another one, which a lot of people pointed out the irony, is electric cars. Because just the way that we're shifting to them and shifting so fast, it's going to create this issue where we need to shift our energy creation into cleaner renewables that can actually power all of these electric cars.
Yeah.
And he's obviously doing that at Tesla, but they're doing lots of AI effort as well. And he can see just this exponential growth, but with that exponential growth, you have to power it.
Every single thing we talk about on this channel requires more power than we currently use.
Yeah.
We're talking about AR headsets walking around, so a thing that is constantly on, like, so, you know, even more so than your phone, because the screen is constantly displaying stuff. Robotics, AI, electric vehicles, like every single thing we're talking about requires more power. And then the fact of it is the U.S. power grid is not designed to handle this much power right now. We literally do not make enough electricity currently. And the infrastructure is old in many places. You see that, I mean, whatever, there's constantly news stories that, you know, famously when there was like the winter storms in Texas, half the power grid went out, you know, and a lot due to deregulation of power grids has had an effect. So there's that kind of piece of it too. The general rise in temperature of the globe makes people use the ACs more, so there's that's drawing power. And then so you have to look at this and go, the world we're heading to and the people who are building it aren't the people in charge of the electricity. You know, like Apple's not building power plants, Google's not building power plants, so they're in charge of selling us stuff. That's their job. And they're going to do that by selling us things that need electricity. And are we going to get to a place where electricity is going to be rationed more? Are we going to have to do some massive investment in our electric grid? Are we going to have to start looking at different avenues of power, going back to more nuclear power, fusion energy, all these exotic technologies maybe? But either way, this kind of dovetails with the first topic here, and that this is the downside of all this stuff we're talking about, and that it is going to have actual physical real world consequences for everyone, not just the people that are using it.
There's a very cool future, I think, for electricity. And we see a lot of things over at Tesla just because they're the big name with it all, but they have their power walls that people have on their homes for home battery backup. And the way you can balance that is that it's generating solar throughout the day, or receiving solar and generating that into electricity into the power walls. And then at night, when it's peak pricing and peak demand and everything, you can run off of your batteries so that you're saving money in the long haul. And then they've been doing a thing called a virtual power plant, which is where all of those people are connected to the same grid. And when there's an event, like there's going to be a blackout or something, and the energy grid needs more electricity at that time because it's stressed, all of these people's batteries, with their excess battery charge that they have, can be sending it back to the grid. So instead of having to have another power plant go online to address all of the electricity that's necessary, it's energy that was already generated that's just being stored and being pushed back into that. But that's obviously a very long-term thing. We've seen a couple demos of it, like in California and I think Australia and stuff, where it works really well. And it's pretty cool, but that's a long-term thing where a lot of people have to get these.
That's the
that
thing,
has to
right?
come
Like
down in price.
So I have solar panels, and I sell power back to the power grid. You know, like, and well, what ends up coming down is that my regular bill is just less. It's not like I'm making a profit off of solar panels, but you need that at a much larger scale when you look at how much power we are going to need. Like, you know, there's all these much smarter people than me. You can read these articles and look at it, but it's just if you look at the graph of like estimated power output, estimated power needed, it's a pretty big gulf between them.
Definitely.
On the horizon technology we can talk about that can maybe alleviate this and maybe fight back against this dystopian nightmare we're talking about. One, bioprocessing, you know about this?
Yeah, I've heard about bioprocessing.
Yeah, tell us about bioprocessing.
In a certain way, this fights against a dystopian future, but in some ways it is the dystopian future.
It kind of goes both ways, yeah.
So there's a thing, it already exists. It's real, and it's called an organoid. And essentially, this is a tiny replica of tissue that functions like an organ. And so they can take stem cells, scientists have already done this, and they can form it into like a brain. But it's not an actual human brain, but it is a human brain. And then it can be doing things and working like a computer. And this isn't just a vision. Again, this they've already done this in a lab. They haven't obviously done this at scale yet, but it's like it's a living organism that is doing computer-like tasks.
A living computer. This gets into deep ethical issues.
Yeah.
But in theory uses less electricity. So hey.
That is the benefit, is that it supposedly uses a fraction of the electricity that silicon-based computing does, and all the stuff we're doing right now with AI with that problem is using a lot of electricity. This, in theory, could be doing the same things, but using much less because it's very optimized like human brains are.
All of a sudden we have like these fake brains in our houses that are running the home AI system. Like, I don't know about this one. But interesting, and I do think that it's going to take looking down non-traditional avenues as we continue to grow all this tech. We just got to make it make sense and actually function in our world. Yeah, and make it not terrible. So we're going to need, I don't know about this, but things like this, right?
Yeah. If you dive even further on the dystopian front, I think Amy Webb talked about this in her talk as well. You could get a brain that's the stem cells from a specific individual.
This is where it gets really weird.
So you get a very smart person's brain, and then that's operating your external life things and your AI. I think it's not just going to be, we just create more electricity. It's always going to be, we need to figure out more efficient ways to do what we're trying to do.
So Apple Vision AR, very cool, but definitely has some unforeseen problems maybe with it as coming down. And I think something that I guess we as consumers are just going to have to guard against, or do our best to protect us from living in a cyberpunk dystopian nightmare.